You've seen the wild video of violent carjackings and in some cases home invasions. And now a break as Peel Regional Police announced 18 arrests and over 150 charges. Good afternoon. Peel Regional Police say they launched a crackdown after a series of violent carjackings and home invasions.
The results have been announced at a morning news conference, and a 14-year-old is among those charged. CTV's John Musselman is in Peel Region today and joins us live with the latest. John.
Well, Natalie, as you well know, we have covered stories in Brampton and Mississauga. We've spoken to homeowners who have had their cars stolen, their keys taken, and guns pointed right at them during these home invasions. Peel Regional Police say it's unacceptable. Today, they say they made a major crack against this organized crime network. It was a 6-month investigation dubbed Project Warlock. Today, Peel Police announced multiple arrests in connection with a string of robberies, home invasions, and carjackings in Brampton and Mississauga. Police say in some home invasions, the victims were threatened with a gun while lying in their beds.
The home invasions have involved individuals waking up to firearms being presented to them in their beds, children's at home being traumatized. I have had the opportunity, thanks to Deputy Milanovic, to read a couple of the victim impact statements of the individuals. It has forever changed the lives of some of these families and the children on the way they live on a day-to-day basis.
Police say the accused are allegedly connected with an organized crime network. Here's a look at some of the numbers. 18 individuals arrested, 150 charges laid, 17 violent home invasions and robberies solved, 12 stolen vehicles recovered with a value over $1.2 million, $55,000 worth of stolen property recovered, and the seizure of 4 prohibited firearms.
Criminals are, as in Project Warlock, becoming increasingly violent and resorting to carjackings and home invasions. When these concerns are coupled with violent offenders who have been released on bail, it results in scenarios like Project Warlock. To be clear, a small percentage of violent criminals is creating the majority of violent crime.
Police say in one of the home invasions, a victim was shot in the leg. And investigators say there were 87 carjackings in Peel Region last year. That's up nearly 60% over last year. Reporting live, I'm John Musselman. Nathan, back to you.
Thank you, John. Toronto Police and the Police Association have launched a campaign aimed at keeping parking enforcement officers safe. And Chief Demkew says violence toward officers will not be tolerated. CTV's Scott Lightfoot is covering this story and joins us now live. And apparently, Scott, these numbers are on the rise.
Yeah, we're talking about things like being pushed, punched, even being hit by vehicles. This is what we're told Toronto's parking enforcement officers are having to deal with. And these are behaviors that Toronto Police say simply must stop.
It's a common sight in this city, people getting a ticket for parking improperly. But according to police, assaults against those giving the tickets are also becoming far too common.
In 2021, there were 6 assaults on Toronto Police parking enforcement officers. In 2022, it more than doubled to 15. Last year, we saw a troubling amount of assaults with 46 members assaulted. And as of July 18th, 27 parking enforcement officers have been assaulted. In most of these cases, the member was assaulted while they served a parking ticket. This is unacceptable behavior.
For the 370 parking enforcement officers in Toronto, it has become a constant concern.
I was hit by a taxi cab who was trying to avoid getting a ticket. I approached the vehicle to try and issue the ticket, and instead of rolling his window down or staying put, he decided to try and peel off and hit me with his vehicle.
Today, the chief of police and the head of the police union addressed the media, calling for a stop to this trend.
It cannot be our parking enforcement officers that are continually targeted for doing their jobs. To risk jail for a $30 parking ticket is beyond anyone's understanding.
Police admit drivers may be frustrated with traffic levels and difficulties finding places to park, but say that's no excuse to take out their frustration on parking enforcement officers.
Listen, I think we can all acknowledge we've experienced congestion in the city. We can all understand that it leads to a sense of frustration. You know, I'm a lifelong resident of this city and I've watched it change over the years. So I totally get the frustration. But let me be very, very clear. The message today is resorting to violence when you're frustrated and taking out violence on our members is unacceptable. It will not be tolerated. So while I appreciate frustration, and we all get that, resorting to violence and risking a criminal record and all the consequences that come to that is simply not acceptable behavior. And quite frankly, it's just not what Torontonians do.
A simple message from police today: fight the ticket, don't fight the person giving it to you.
They may have different duties and responsibilities than police officers, but under the criminal code, parking enforcement officers are considered peace officers, which means the charges for and legal consequences if you're convicted of assaulting a parking enforcement officer would be the same as if you assaulted a police officer. 20 live downtown, I'm Scott Lightfoot. Natalie, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. 2 people are in hospital following a crash involving a police cruiser and an ATV in North York. The crash happened just after 10 p.m. last night in the area of Shepherd Avenue and Laura Road, just west of Jane. One of the individuals on the ATV became trapped beneath the police car and needed to be freed by fire crews. Police say one person was taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Another person taken to hospital with minor injuries. It is not known what led to the crash. The circumstances still under investigation. The province's Special Investigation Unit has been notified.
Still to come, 4 deaths by suicide in New Zealand have been linked to products sold by a Mississauga man charged with murder. CTV John Woodward is continuing his investigation. But first, we have a look at the forecast. There's a live shot of the city. It is actually a lovely looking day, but it seems a little bit cloudy on this shot, but not too humid. A great day to be outdoors, but as always, it's important to stay hydrated. Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. How are things outside, Jess?
It's nice, and you're right, it is a little cloudy out there, but we're holding on to a pretty decent forecast temperature-wise. We're not dealing with too much heat and humidity, so if you're getting out, getting your steps in, it's not too oppressive when you walk out when you feel all that warmth. We are keeping a close eye, though, on a system that's kind of making its way across Lake Michigan that will eventually impact us, but for now, we're holding on to a fairly dry forecast. We're looking at temperatures in the mid-20 range right now, feeling into the upper 20s. We see that climb into the low 30s as we head into the afternoon. Right now through the islands, we're sitting at about 23, a little warmer out through Pearson. This afternoon, generally sitting pretty seasonal with a more southerly facing wind. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long range forecast, including some pop-up showers today and tomorrow. But right now, I'll send things back over to Natalie and Nathan.
Okay, thanks, Jess. LCBO stores officially reopened this morning following a historic strike by more than 9,000 workers.
Consumers once again able to buy booze at the retailers after the deal with OPSEU was ratified on the weekend. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us now live with more details. Siobhan.
Well, there has been a steady stream of people in and out of the Summerhill LCBO where we are this morning. They're replenishing their fridges and their liquor cabinets. As you mentioned, about 9,000 workers have been off the job since July 5th in a dispute over wages, job security, and also trying to get the government to back down on their expansion of liquor sales in the province. Now, over the course of the strike, workers were able to secure a pay increase of 8% over the life of their contract. That's 1% more than was on the table before the strike. There's also a guarantee to convert 1,000 casual jobs to full-time permanent positions and a guarantee to keep stores open at the LCBO as those liquor sales change across the province. We caught up with some shoppers today about how they're feeling now being able to buy booze at the LCBO again, being on the other side of the strike.
We're short. We're out of stock.
What was on the restock list today? You got 2 bags?
Whiskey, beer, what
Whiskey
else is
mainly.
in there? Wine, yeah, vermouth.
This is great because it's so close to me, so I don't have to travel all over the city, trying to find a bottle of wine.
She's just charming in there, happy to be back at work.
I think some of their concerns are legitimate as a union. I'm particularly concerned about the number of part-timers and the low wages.
Now, this discussion, this back and forth between the government and OPSEU has been messy, and that isn't over just because workers are back on the job today. OPSEU is saying that Premier Doug Ford can't be trusted and that their fight will continue beyond this round of bargaining. Reporting live, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan and Natalie, back to you.
All right, thank you, Siobhan. Well, there are new developments in the case of an Ontario man accused of selling poisonous products online to help people take their own lives.
A top coroner in New Zealand has linked 4 death by suicide cases to Kenneth Law, who's already facing charges for deaths in the GTA. CTV's John Woodward has the story.
I'm Ken, yeah. Kenneth Law was a chef by day at Toronto's Royal York Hotel, but in his off hours, he's accused of selling poisonous products directed at those who wished to commit suicide. In Canada, police have charged him with 14 counts of murder for deaths across Ontario. Now, New Zealand's coroner's office has revealed 4 deaths of people who ordered Law's products online. 2 students aged 18 and 21, another 21-year-old, and a 40-year-old DJ and personal trainer ordered Law's products after visiting websites and discussion forums associated with Kenneth Law between 2021 and 2023, the coroner's reports say. Mr. Law lives in Canada. His activities are outside the jurisdiction of the New Zealand courts, but authorities there had ruled some sites objectionable and moved to block access. There's no legal mechanism to do that in Canada, though the federal government has introduced the Online Harms Act, which would prohibit content that encourages young people to harm themselves.
As a parent, it literally terrifies me that the most dangerous toys in my home, my children's screens, are not subject to any safety standards right now.
Family members of the dead have called for more.
Not next month, not next year. They need to be stopped now.
Worldwide, the number of deaths attributed to Law's products have risen to 129, according to a tally by CTV News. Law has denied the charges and says he's not responsible for what people do with his products. He's not facing any charges in New Zealand. His Canadian trial is expected to start next year. John Woodward, CTV News.
Now to Jasper, Alberta, where there's been a frantic emergency exodus overnight.
At Jasper National Park, several wildfires south of the town prompted an evacuation order for all visitors and 4,700 residents. The evacuation order was issued just before 10 last night. People driving in the dark encountered detours because the flames were so close to the roads and the highways. The fire spread quickly, with park and town officials scrambling to clear up the gridlock. People were told to pack important documents, food, water, pets, and medication for several days. In northern Alberta, a cluster of wildfires have forced thousands of others to flee their homes. Meantime, in northern Alberta, thousands of residents have been forced to leave.
It was like an apocalypse or something. Like, it was an eerie feeling.
About 170 wildfires are burning across Alberta right now, including more than 50 considered out of control. The province says the situation could get worse. Air quality alerts have been issued from BC to Saskatchewan as fires push thick smoke into the air.
A Canadian has been killed by Israeli forces near the Gaza border. Israeli police say a Canadian citizen threatened Israeli security forces with a knife. The man reportedly drove to the entrance of an Israel border town, left his vehicle, and approached the security forces with a knife. The forces opened fire and killed the man. There were no other injuries.
In the U.S., the director of the Secret Service has resigned after the agency failed to prevent an assassination attempt of Donald Trump. Kimberly Cheadle faced bipartisan condemnation during an appearance before the House of Representatives oversight committee. Yesterday, she declined to answer questions from frustrated lawmakers about the security plan for the July 13th rally in Pennsylvania and how law enforcement responded to the suspicious behavior of the gunman. 1 person was killed, 3 others wounded in the attack, including Trump. Several Republican and Democratic lawmakers called on her to resign on Monday. U.S. President Joe Biden says he will appoint a successor soon. The U.S. Vice President will make her first visit to a battleground state later today, holding a campaign rally in Wisconsin.
Kamala Harris now has enough support from Democratic delegates to win her party's nomination and replace Joe Biden as its presidential candidate.
So in the days and weeks ahead, I, together with you, will do everything in my power to unite our Democratic Party, to unite our nation, and to win this election.
Harris will be in Milwaukee a week after the Republican National Convention wrapped up in the city. She says the November election presents a clear choice between 2 different visions. Harris says Donald Trump wants to take the country back to a time before many people had full freedoms and equal rights. Harris would officially become the Democratic nominee at the party's convention next month. Meanwhile, Joe Biden will deliver a speech tomorrow night on his decision to withdraw from the presidential race. CTV's Scott Hurst is standing by live with the latest on this. Scott, what is the focus now for Kamala Harris?
Well, Natalie, first and foremost, a lot of people interested to hear what Joe Biden has to say in that address from the Oval Office tomorrow night on his plans ahead and how he plans to finish out his term, because, of course, he's not stepping down from the presidency right away. He's just stepping down from running for another 4 years in office. And so now before that, of course, as you mentioned, today we'll hear from Kamala Harris, her first campaign stop as she's all but wrapped up the Democratic nomination. She's convinced enough delegates to back her, and she is on track now to become the presumptive Democratic nominee. And Wisconsin is a very important battleground state. It is one that Joe Biden won in 2020, but only by 20,000 votes or so. And so it is, of course, key to hang on to for the Democrats as they look to hold on to the White House. And so that is what we're going to be hearing from Kamala Harris as she looks to kind of separate herself from Joe Biden, but also continue on many of the policies that they believe have worked over the last couple of years. And so we saw her last speaking to campaign staff who are now her campaign staff in Delaware as she looks to all but lock up the Democratic nomination, Natalie.
Republican strategy since the news of Biden stepping down and endorsing Harris here.
The Republicans have both unleashed policy attacks and also personal attacks as they have, shifted their focus now to Kamala Harris as the presumptive Democratic nominee. And so what they can run on in terms of policy, of course, is that they will try to frame this as another 4 years of Joe Biden and what they're calling Joe Biden's failed policy. So they can really go after, they've been critical for many years now of Biden's handling of the economy, most notably inflation, cost of living, so much that has affected Americans and really everything they buy. And of course, we're no stranger to that as well on this side of the border. And also, Republicans have been very critical of Kamala Harris over the past couple of years as her focus was supposed to be on immigration and the southern border crisis. And so they will likely focus that in terms of their attacks against Kamala Harris as she now becomes the presumptive Democratic nominee. And one more key decision that Kamala Harris has to make over the next couple days and weeks ahead as he officially wraps up the nomination is her pick for vice president. And here's more from what Avis Jones-DeWeaver, a political commentator, has to say in terms of what Harris is looking for.
She is going to choose someone, I believe, that will help her be able to carry a state that she knows the Democratic Party needs in order to win. So there are several states that are either headed by Democrats in the governor's office or have a Democrat that has been elected to the Senate that has shown that they can win the state that could help her.
And Natalie, the Trump campaign has also been saying that they've kind of been planning for Harris to take over for several weeks now, as we've heard that chorus grow louder for Joe Biden to step aside. So this isn't obviously a big secret that Joe Biden did step aside. It didn't obviously become official until he sent out that note on Sunday afternoon. So it's only been 48 hours, and Republicans are already focusing their attention on Kamala Harris as they expect her to be, and it appears that she's all but locked up the Democratic nomination, Natalie.
Okay, CTV's Scott Hurst. Thanks for this, Scott, on the latest on the race for the White House.
Thanks a lot.
A driver of a car is facing impaired driving charges after a family with a baby was struck in Bowmanville.
One man was killed in the chain reaction crash. CTV's Janice Golding has the latest.
It was a relatively quiet Sunday evening in Bowmanville. Spencer McCracken and his wife, daughter, and dog were out for a walk around 8:30 p.m. when they stopped in this driveway waiting to cross Simpson Avenue. Seconds later, their lives would be changed forever.
The silver car goes by, hits the SUV, and flies up over our side ramp here and ended up hitting the people.
Struck by a gray Hyundai sedan allegedly driven by a drunk driver without insurance.
It's terrible.
Katie McNeil was standing in front of her home when the incident happened.
I heard people saying, like, my baby. And then when I made my way this way, I saw how many people were actually involved.
McCracken was rushed to a Toronto hospital but would die of his injuries.
He was an amazing guy. He looked out for everyone around him. He did anything he could for everybody.
People gathered at a growing memorial to lay flowers and comfort each other, among them two of McCracken's co-workers.
It's tough to just get the news this morning, and I think we're all hurting. He has a big work family and a lot of support that side. But, he would drop anything to help anyone, give the shirt off his back to anyone. So he was an amazing man, father, brother.
McCracken's wife, Brianna, was taken to hospital with serious injuries. Their daughter, Lily, also taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
We knew this was going to happen, and this won't be the last.
Retired police officer Rick Olson lives across the street from the crash site. He says speeding has been an issue along the stretch of road for some time.
They put this crosswalk up maybe a year ago. It's done nothing. It's a shortcut down to the baseline from number 2 so they don't have to get on Liberty, which is busy. And I'll sit out there and I just can't stand the speeds.
Neighbors say they've been trying to get the city to install stop signs or speed bumps, but have been told it would impede ambulance access to nearby Bowmanville Hospital. Janice Golding, CTV News.
24 people have been rescued after a fire at a downtown shelter in Hamilton. The blaze broke out at the YMCA men's residence on James Street early yesterday afternoon. Some of the people trapped inside were hanging out of the windows when Hamilton fire crews arrived. 24 residents were rescued. 5 were taken out of the building from windows, and 11 were transported to various Hamilton hospitals. The Ontario Fire Marshal is now investigating the cause of the blaze.
York Regional Police are sharing dramatic video of a shooting and arson targeting a residence in Markham in the hopes of making an arrest in their investigation. Detectives say the same home was targeted on 2 occasions. Last Thursday, security cameras captured several shots being fired at the house in the Winfields Road and Beckenridge Drive area. This was just after 3:30 in the morning. No one was injured. Then just 3 days later, early Sunday morning, the surveillance camera recorded a suspect pouring a flammable liquid on a vehicle in the driveway before lighting it on fire. It didn't take long before it burst into flames. The suspect is described as a man who was wearing a black Adidas hooded sweater and a black face mask with red gloves. He was driving a white 4-door gray SUV with roof racks. Police say both incidents were targeted, and they are asking anyone with information to contact them.
The Canadian Medical Association is calling on governments across the country to ensure Canadians can access publicly funded health care without having to pay for it privately. In a new report, the CMA examined the mix of public versus private health care across the country at a time when 1 in 5 Canadians don't have timely access to a family doctor. The organization made 22 recommendations, including calling on governments to establish primary care teams for 50% of Canadians within the next 5 years, reaching 8% within 10 years. They also called on governments to clamp down on jurisdictions that charge user fees to access publicly insured primary care.
Settling into another pretty seasonal summer day. A little cloud cover out there right now, but we'll see some sunshine throughout the afternoon. But we are watching for the chance of maybe a passing shower, especially north of the city as we head into the late afternoon. For now, though, we're holding on to a decent amount of sunshine out there through parts of the GTA. 27 as we head into that midpoint of our day. It'll feel like 31, and that southerly wind helping to keep it feel nice and warm out there. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast as we step in towards the middle of the week, and we'll look ahead to show you what you can expect for the weekend.
Welcome back. Well, if you were out and about at all early this morning, you would know that it was sticky, it was hot, just as the sun was coming up. Not much of a breeze.
No, but I did like it. Because I do like the warm weather, and I was out for a walk also this morning, and you know, it's summertime. This is what I expect.
Listen, we have such a short season of warm weather in this country, so I will take those hot and sweaty days. I was out for a walk too and had immediate regrets because I was sweaty like 5 minutes into the walk, but I will take it because again, summer feels like it's this long for the entire year, so I will complain because that's my right. But I'm just going to say I do enjoy the heat. The good news is as we head into the day tomorrow, it does cool down a little bit, but it comes with a chance of rain. So it's a bit of a trade-off, right, as we kind of make our way into the next kind of 24 to 48 hours. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers you don't pay unless they win. A decent amount of sunshine. You can see it peeking through the clouds there. A beautiful shot from the chopper early on this morning. And again, if you were up early, we weren't dealing with that, brilliant sunshine just yet, but it was sticky out there. We had the humidex value was kind of in that mid-20 range already into the early morning hours this morning. So whether you were by the water or you were down in the core or anywhere in the GTA, you felt that kind of warmth and that stickiness. As we head in towards the afternoon, it does get a little warmer, but we pretty much settle at seasonal as we head into kind of the midpoint of our afternoon. Right now, we're sitting at 25. It feels like 29, and we're not too far off from where we're going to end up as we head throughout the day today. And really right across central and southern Ontario, we're holding on at a fairly seasonal point as we head throughout the day today. Again, into the afternoon, sitting at 27, it'll feel like 31. A little stickier, a little more humid into that southwestern corner, and then down towards areas through Niagara, through Hamilton, and east out towards Kingston. So those humidex values into that mid-30 range. Tonight, Again, we're pretty close to seasonal, sitting between 18 and about 19 degrees for the most part. A few light clouds out there, but we do watch for the chance of some passing showers north of the city and perhaps through the downtown core. We're just kind of watching the system to see how it develops as we head through the rest of our day. We're looking at this line right here, kind of sitting over Lake Michigan, but it will push its way across southern Ontario in a very spotty nature as we head throughout the afternoon. The heaviest will be kind of central and northern Ontario to an extent. For us, we're looking at very scattered showers if they come to fruition at all. Through the midpoint of our day, it's really not that bad. Again, right around 4 o'clock around the Golden Horseshoe, that's where we're watching for the best chance for us here in the GTA through the downtown core. Heavier, though, again, north of the city, so say Vaughan or maybe a little bit further west out towards Brampton. You can see more in the way of a consistent pop-up shower. Into the early evening, it settles again north and east of us, so anywhere kind of tracking out towards Peterborough. Overnight, though, it's not too bad. We get into tomorrow morning, generally just another kind of cloudy-ish start, a little bit of sunshine out there. The line of showers is going to linger kind of along those eastern shorelines of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. And again, we're watching for pop-up showers to begin in through the lunch hour, carrying through about 4 o'clock, and then we get a little bit of a break as we head in through the evening. So by no means are these washes of days, but we're just watching for that heat and humidity to build. We get it kind of bubbling up into the late afternoon, and then it clears out. Heading in towards Thursday, though, we start to settle into a really beautiful kind of stretch of dry weather. We're holding on to some pretty seasonal daytime highs until we aren't, and then it gets really warm. Through your Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we do a bit of a yo-yo. Very seasonal today. Below seasonal as we watch that kind of shower activity pop up as we head through Wednesday, and then Thursday, the chance lingers into the early morning hours, but to be fair, it's mostly just cloud cover. And then through Friday onwards, we're holding on to a decent amount of sunshine, high pressure, a very stable air mass sits over us. And through your Friday right through to Monday, it just gets warmer and warmer and warmer. And by the time we head in towards the beginning of next week, we're into the 30s and potentially into heat warning criteria, but we'll watch that closely. I'll send things right now back over to Nathan.
All right, thank you, Jess. Still to come, the fit that athletes will be bringing to Paris for the Olympics is looking sporty. Stay with us.
Shoplifting and retail theft have become a $5 billion annual problem that leads to higher prices for everyone else.
With inflation and the high cost of living, there's been an increase in shoplifting. And if you're caught, it could have serious consequences. CTV's Pat Foran explains.
Shoplifting has always been a problem for retailers, but now there is a growing concern over how brazen the stealing has become. Theft happens on a daily basis at many stores, and more retailers want to prosecute those responsible.
It is unfortunately getting worse, and stores are implementing various measures.
Sam Rad, a business consultant and former president of the Paralegal Society of Canada, says there are programs that could help a first-time offender avoid prosecution in some circumstances. But for those convicted of shoplifting, they will end up with a criminal record, which will change their life.
Then you would have to go through the process of getting pardoned from the National Parole Board. With a criminal record, you would be inadmissible to go to the United States. You could potentially hinder yourself in getting employment.
Theft is also a major problem at the LCBO. A spokesperson told CTV News it does not share theft details, but Peel Regional Police say last year in just Mississauga and Brampton, there were more than 3,500 cases of shoplifting at LCBO stores.
Theft for sure is on everybody's minds, so general shoplifting.
The Retail Council of Canada says escalating violence and weapons being used during thefts is also concerning for businesses, as well as organized crime and group theft.
Where you have multiple people, 3, 4, 5, going into a retail environment and stealing in bulk. Shopping carts full, handful, bagfuls of merchandise.
Stores are faced with increasing security while at the same time trying to make sure shoppers have a positive retail experience. Rad says to anyone considering shoplifting, don't do it.
Don't take the risk. It is not worth it. And the spending money on the legal fees and going through the criminal justice system and the public embarrassment and embarrassments amongst family, it is not worth it.
Pat Foran, CTV News.
Shoplifting and retail theft have become a $5 billion annual problem that leads to higher prices for everyone else, as we just heard from Pat Foran.
Well, all of Canada's big grocery store chains have now signed on to a code of conduct. The initiative is designed to protect consumers, but what will it actually mean for shoppers and their wallets? CTV's Sam Hoop has the details.
It's no secret that a full load of groceries today will set you back a fair chunk of change.
I think the prices of groceries are very high for what value you're actually getting.
They're pretty expensive, some good sales, but you have to shop around.
And the same goes for grocery store suppliers, which have faced a spike in fees in recent years just to keep products on the shelves of Canada's major grocery chains.
We've seen it actually become openly antagonistic.
The relationships have become very strained. We have a lot of finger pointing going on in the industry.
It has spurred the call for a Canadian grocery code of conduct to keep larger grocers in check.
What the code of conduct does is set some limits on what they can do and what they can ask for to sort of level the playing field between retailers and their suppliers.
The big five have signed on. That's Loblaws, Sobeys, Metro, Costco, and Walmart. Food experts say what matters now is compliance.
They are endorsing the code, but will they follow the rules? That's really the key here.
As for whether the code will end up lowering food prices, it's too early to say for sure.
My guess is that it will stabilize the food inflation over time, anywhere between 1.5 to 2.5% instead of seeing it like a 10%, for example.
There's no doubt that this is going to have a positive impact on the supply chain and on costs in the supply chain. I think in turn that's bound to have some positive impact on prices.
Under no circumstances is a grocer going to say, oh, we're making fewer concessions from our suppliers. Let's lower prices so that we squeeze ourselves even further in the other direction. It just doesn't make strategic sense.
Sam Haupt, CTV News.
An Olympian from Winnipeg is headed to Paris after all. Desiree Scott didn't make the cut when Team Canada announced its women's soccer roster earlier this month. But the lineup has been shuffled after Sydney Collins fractured her leg, and Scott is back for a fourth Olympic Games. The midfielder will be an accredited alternate. On social media, Scott says she is excited to be back with the team despite the winding road it took to get there. Well, the runways of Paris are used to high fashion.
But it won't just be models sporting new looks. In the French capital, with the Olympic Games just days away, CTV's Paul Hollingsworth shows us Canada's new look.
For the second straight Olympics, Lululemon is outfitting Canadian Olympians in style and color. Athletes attempting to reach the podium in Paris are even getting hats, bags, and sneakers. This Lulu shopper mostly likes what she sees.
As the women's are a bit more like brighter and in your face and not as subtle as I prefer my wardrobe to be.
Ralph Lauren has been the official outfitter for Team USA since 2008.
The goal is to break a world record.
This year, they've deployed a classic prep school look.
And I'm sure there's a lot of athlete input in terms of wanting to look good.
The Americans will be decked out in jeans, sport coats, and pullovers. There's also buzz surrounding the Mongolian athletes, who will wear traditional clothing at the opening ceremony. With huge audiences watching the Olympics all around the world and exposure on social media, the marketing upside for these companies supplying the clothing is enormous. Halifax Wanderers soccer team president Derek Martin is in the business of using team gear to generate excitement for athletes.
You look at an example like us with Macron, who came on board to support the Canadian Premier League and all of our teams.
That company used soccer to launch its brand in Canada. Martin says the global business possibilities for Lululemon and Ralph Lauren will be on a much grander scale.
And maybe some markets that they currently aren't launched in or that they want to do much better in.
Canadian athletes will also wear Lululemon gear and clothing at the Paralympics in late August. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
The Eiffel Tower will be featured prominently during the Games, but the famous landmark is getting some extra attention already. People in central Paris were given a celestial treat last night when the moon passed through the Olympic rings on the iconic monument. They're made of recycled steel and were installed in June using cranes. The beach volleyball competitions will be held at the foot of the Eiffel Tower. Pieces of steel taken from it are also being used in the Paris 2024 medals. The opening ceremony for the Games is Friday. The Canadian team will announce its flag bearers tomorrow.
Still to come, the anticipation of an interest rate cut is being seen on the stock market.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
When?
Stocks were mixed in morning trading as the market awaits a tide of quarterly earnings.
Andrew Bell of B&M Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Here are your business headlines. U.S. stocks edged higher in early trading, while Toronto's benchmark index was slightly down. Investors were standing by for results from Tesla and Alphabet after the closing bell. Meanwhile, the stock market is heading into a seasonally weaker period. Toronto was weighed down by energy shares as the price of crude dipped below $77 US a barrel. The Bank of Canada is expected to cut interest rates again tomorrow morning, and the lower borrowing costs are already heating up the housing market. The benchmark Canadian price for a home rose last month for the first time in almost a year, and sales rose for the first time since January. However, affordability remains close to its worst level in data going back to the mid-1980s. And finally, profit at General Motors surged 60% from a year ago, but the shares, which have risen almost 30% in 2024, fell 6%. U.S. demand for pickup trucks and SUVs boosted profits. Meanwhile, GM is delaying investments in electric vehicles, which lose money at current sales volumes. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
As Kamala Harris sets out on the campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination, we're getting some reaction on this side of the border.
CTV's Michael Couture reports on Harris's Canadian connections and what it could mean for the relationship between the two countries.
It was a staged photo op of Vice President Kamala Harris and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in November of 2021. But as the conversation continued, it turned into a candid moment between two politicians and tight-knit allies. It's a closeness Liberals hope will continue if Harris becomes the Democratic nominee.
It's always been very constructive, someone who understands the importance of the relationship. And I would say the strategic nature. You know, we're just not nice people up there. We're strategic.
And the Liberals are being strategic, knowing a lot could change between now and the Democratic Convention, where Harris could be anointed her party's nominee. Having spent part of her teenage years in Montreal, Harris knows Canada perhaps a little more than other U.S. politicians. And her record has impressed NDP leader Jagmeet Singh.
We know that Vice President Kamala Harris is someone that has fought against the big banks, taken the side of working people, and has showed a real commitment to values that we share, values of defending everyday folks.
Hailing from California, Harris has been a fierce opponent of pipelines like Keystone XL, which could have sent Canadian energy through the U.S. She's also criticized the renegotiated NAFTA, saying it didn't do enough to protect the environment.
Kamala Harris as president would be great for Canada.
Democrats living outside of the U.S. have been reinvigorated. With senior members of the party pledging their support to Harris, donations have also picked up. And they hope this newfound energy will maintain for the next 4 months.
We just got to ride that to Election Day and make sure that everybody who does have the ability to vote gets out and votes.
Michael Couture, CTV News.
A well-known anti-gun violence advocate in the city has died. Louis March, who was also a longtime community leader and youth mentor, died over the weekend following a brief illness. The Scarborough resident was 68. March founded the Zero Gun Violence movement in 2013 to raise awareness about gun violence and work to reduce it and its root causes. He spoke with CTV News about the issue at a town hall just last month.
90% of the guns found at crime scenes are illegal guns that come from America. Guns do not just wake up and say, guess what, we're going to Canada. Someone is bringing them across the border and somebody is distributing them in the community. We need to do a better job of interrupting and breaking that flow of guns.
March received several awards for his community service and advocacy, notably an Ontario Volunteer Service Award in 2008, as well as a City of Toronto Mayor's Community Safety Award in 2021. It's one of the world's largest film festivals.
And the lineup is already out ahead of the start of the Toronto International Film Festival. Elton John is among the star-studded guests who will be walking the red carpet this fall. The festival will debut his documentary, Never Too Late, a film that contains concert footage from the past 50 years of the singer's career. Bruce Springsteen will also make an appearance at the festival, with his documentary set to debut then as well. Springsteen had previously been forced to postpone his concert dates in Ottawa last year as he recovered from peptic ulcer disease. Fans at the Toronto Film Festival can also catch a glimpse of A-listers like Pharrell Williams and Riz Ahmed. The festival kicks off on September 5th.
Coming up, using drones to win the fight against mosquitoes. That's coming up.
Toronto City Council will consider a motion this week for a dedicated bus lane on a stretch of Spadina Avenue. The proposal is intended to help reduce travel times. They have tripled since streetcar service was suspended earlier this summer. Deputy Mayor Asma Malik is recommending a temporary bus lane between Richmond Street and Lakeshore Boulevard West. City staff estimate it would cost the city $240,000.
Now to Atlantic Canada, where there's a new tool being used to fight mosquitoes.
It is a novel approach that is also supposed to be better for the environment. Here's CTV's Sarah Plowman.
They're on a mission against the masses. Outnumbered by a long shot. Crews are calling in a new tool in the mosquito fight: drones.
What we're really trying to do is just minimize the impact of the mosquitoes in these built-up areas.
They now have two. One's job is to map out the marshes, flagging standing water where mosquitoes breed. The larger drone will target those areas and spray a larvicide.
It's fully autonomous, so I'm really there just for emergency scenarios.
Wind grounded the larger of the drones, but controlling mosquitoes this way is expected to be better for the environment. Instead of trudging through the marshes in all-terrain vehicles, they can fly and spray with precision.
With the drone, there's no limitation in terms of the terrain where you can and can't go.
The larvicide is a naturally occurring bacteria found in soils. It only affects biting flies.
Targeted way of going after those mosquitoes without wiping out all the other insects that give us all those benefits, without wiping out nature.
While the mission is to combat a nuisance, as mosquito-borne diseases creep farther north, a more effective control program could have public health benefits.
With climate change and shifting climate patterns, it's certainly something that we're maybe not as well insulated from as we'd like to think we are.
They're anxious to get it out and see how well it works. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Moncton.
An iconic Canadian animal is making its return to one area in southern Alberta.
As CTV's Carson Marchuk explains, it's a homecoming 30 years in the making.
Way better setup than where you lived before.
This 2-year-old beaver is getting a new lease on life in southwest Alberta.
She was in the city of Calgary downtown and was injured and was brought to us by a member of the public.
After spending 133 days in rehabilitation to quarantine and gain weight, Calgary Wildlife have released the beaver into the Screwdriver Creek near Beaver Mines.
Having one back here is going to be a tremendous boon to this creek.
The property where the beaver will live is owned by Mike Judd, who says beavers haven't roamed the area for more than 3 decades.
With climate change and drought conditions, often this creek doesn't make it down to the Castle River anymore, which it's an important tributary.
He says without beavers, the area's water quality, fishery, and bird life have suffered over the years. But Wayland says the reintroduction of beavers could see dams being built to create wetlands for other species, filter water, and reduce erosion.
Water recharging water tables, they have a really positive effect on that. They help against drought, they help against forest fire.
Relocating beavers doesn't come easy. Laws in Alberta say you can't trap nuisance beavers and move them in the province to limit the spread of disease. But Wayland is hoping someday that'll be changed.
There are programs that are being done in BC and in the western United States as well that are reestablishing beavers into the area, using beavers that are considered nuisance animals, putting them through quarantine periods, and then moving them into areas that are suffering from drought.
While it won't take long for the beaver to get settled in her new home, those involved hope to have her mating soon to grow the population.
It's really easy for us to take away pieces of the natural world, and it's very hard to bring them back. We're learning this all the time, so The idea that we can restore nature, to me, is very encouraging.
Carson Marsouk, CTV News, Beaver Mines.
Excitement is building for what's expected to be one of the highest grossing movies of the year.
Fans are already counting down the hours until they can see Deadpool and Wolverine. Here in Toronto, people are already lining up outside Scotiabank Theatre Toronto on Richmond Street for tonight's red carpet event. The movie stars Canadian Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. Both are scheduled to be there this evening.
Well, I'm a big fan of Marvel, obviously, and I've been watching all the movies since I was like 2. And this is literally my most anticipated movie of all time, so I'm very, very excited to be here.
I can tell you, I've been waiting for this moment to see Hugh Jackman in that yellow costume since he started doing it. Also, I'm here to meet Ryan Reynolds and tell him if he ever needs a stunt double, 14 and less, I'm your guy, okay?
Deadpool and Wolverine's expected to break records when it opens this weekend. Hope it's good. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us here, thank you for watching. I'm Natalie Johnson.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great day.